remind us about the struggles that Prophet Abraham went through, and his son Ismail. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فلما بلغ معه السعي قال يا بني إني أرى في المنام أني أذبحك فانظر ماذا ترى. قال يا أبت افعل ما تؤمر ستجدني إن شاء الله من الصابرين. Then, when the son reached the age of true work with him, Abraham said, "O my son, I see in a vision that I offer thee in sacrifice. Now see what is thy view." The son, Ismail, peace be upon him, said, "O my father, do as thou art commanded. Thou wilt find me, if God wills, one practicing patience and constancy." Sadaqallah.
Let's skip the handshakes for this time. Yusuf. I'd like to go ahead and welcome our president to give us some opening remarks. Brother Asad, please join us up here.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome. It's our first, hybrid meeting. Inshallah, we hope to have a very productive meeting. And that's all I have to say. Arturo, new district official, is joining us virtually. So to see how our club operates. So inshallah, we'll all learn from each other today. And glad to see that everybody is healthy and safe.
Give a round of applause, guys. Okay. Arturo, can you hear us okay?
Yes, I can. Loud.
Right.
Thank you.
You guys can see him on the screen here and also on that screen. Is that good? All right, perfect. We'll have you address the club maybe at the end, if you like, Arturo.
Sounds good.
All right, sounds good. Okay. One other thing, guys. I know we don't have the tables this time around, so if you need something to write with, we've got these. So does anyone need anything to write with? I'll go ahead and I'll give it to Omer. I'll pass it down. We also have pens up here, so you can write. Well, these are evaluators, and just want to take notes as well. All right, this is a very special meeting. It's our first hybrid meeting, first time we're meeting in person. And I'd like to welcome our Vice President of Education, who's going to be our Toastmasters today. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Muhammad Riyaz.
Thank you, Harijuddin, for inviting me. And this is the special meeting today, where we are going to have a hybrid meeting both in Zoom as well as in the ICW Masjid. And we are really excited to keep this meeting after a long time. Today's meeting is kind of youth celebration and youth party. That's the topic of this today's meeting. And the first, it's going to be like it's going to be a very good meeting today. Our agenda is going to include like 3 great speeches and some table topics from Asad. And the 3 topics are very great. The 3 topics, so everybody can gain knowledge on those topics. And then next on an agenda is today is word master. I'm going to call Zayed Koshal to today's word and explain about the word master. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you for coming out, making the effort, and those virtually dialing in. Today's word is acumen, and it means the ability to make good judgments and quick decisions typically in a particular domain. For example, in a sentence, you could say, capable lawyer with business acumen are valuable to any firm.
Can you spell it? Spell the word.
Oh, you spell it A-C-U-M-E-N. Acumen.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Next is our today's agenda is going to be Joke Master by Harris Dean.
No applause for me, okay, that's fine. Hopefully you guys will applaud after the joke. One day, Einstein has to speak at an important science conference. On the way there, he tells his driver that looks a bit like him, "I'm sick of all these conferences. I always say the same things over and over." The driver agrees, "You're right. As your driver, I attended all of them, even though I don't know anything about science. I could give the conference in your place." "That's a great idea," says Einstein. "Let's switch places there." So they switch clothes, and as soon as they arrive, the driver dressed as Einstein goes on stage and starts giving the usual speech, while the real Einstein, dressed as the car driver, attends it. But in the crowd, there's one scientist who wants to impress everyone and thinks of a very difficult question to ask Einstein, hoping he won't be able to respond. This guy sounds like one of us. That's not the joke. So this guy stands up and interrupts the conference by posing his very difficult question. The whole room goes silent, holding their breath, waiting for the response. The driver looks at him dead in the eye and says, "Sir, your question is so easy to answer that I'm going to let my driver reply with it." Mr. Toastmaster.
Thank you, Harris. Very nice joke. Next is going to be our today's time is going to be Asya Hussain. So she'll be like she's here. She's going to watch all our timings based on the agenda. You can raise your hand. Asya, yeah, okay. So she's very strict. Okay, be careful about her. No? She's very strict. She shows the exact attendance. What are the timings there on the agenda? And if you see that, you have to stop immediately. Next is our grammarian. Today's grammarian is going to be Umayr Hussain, and he's going to see your ohms, hours, and what are the grammarian mistakes you do during your speeches. And he's going to count it, and he's going to let us know after the end of the meeting. Next is the first speech. Today's first speech is going to be like from Musaid Kaushal, right? This is it's kind of a case study, I believe. And I just want to mention about Musaid Kaushal. He's a history student at UIC. He's very interested in a lot of different things, including how we can learn, outside the classroom, and uplift the community in various ways. I always see him as a great volunteer at ICW. Whenever I enter my car, he's the first one to receive me at the entrance. All the time, he's a great volunteer for the traffic and the traffic controller. Any time, he's ready to do any volunteering at ICW.
इसको फोटो नहीं आ रहा।
His case study is going to be like Iman, uplifting community through sports.
क्या करें?
First speech. Thank you.
कहीं आपको होना है तो रखती मैं ले जाओ क्योंकि वो गया करा तो मैं करना फिर से
Who are online Zoom meeting, please can you mute yourself, please?
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm going to keep my mask on just because I was at work, so I'm used to having a mask on. Thanks for being here. Thank you for joining us virtually. Have you ever wondered of the millions of different shows and documentaries that you can watch on Netflix? There are so many different things based on your search results, what you watched yesterday. Today, something new is going to pop up, from sports to different documentaries. It just so happens that a couple weeks ago, they uploaded
म्यूट
some
करना होते
documentary that focuses on different
इस पे आया
sports.
तो नहीं म्यूट करो मुझे लिखा हुआ तो नहीं है यहाँ
Here in the US, when we talk about sports, we think of baseball and basketball and football, all the common everyday sports, or even wrestling. Doesn't matter if you're wearing a wrestling t-shirt. All these different types of sports. But quick question for you guys. How many people here have ever heard of freediving? So we have one person that's heard of freediving. So let's talk about uplifting the community through sports and use a unique case study. We have to start by asking ourselves an important question. What impact do sports have on a culture and a society? And think in the context of how important sports is during COVID-19. Does anyone have any answers?
Very important.
Right. In the go ahead, Haris.
I would say they have a much less impact in COVID-19 because people aren't, there's no fans to watch. It's not as exciting.
Right. So Haris says there's no fans in the stands today at like a Cubs game or a Blackhawks game. You could also argue they are equally as important during COVID-19 because sports in American society have provided people with an escape. Now, when you look at the last 4 months, they canceled all the sports in March, and then they just recently started to make a comeback. So for people here, it's like, okay, I get to watch the Cubs every night and the Blackhawks, et cetera, et cetera. But the real impact that they have outside of American culture is greater because it's like a sense of pride. So let's start to dive into certain things. Let's talk about what freediving is first. It's essentially underwater diving in the ocean. And the unique thing about freediving versus something such as scuba diving is it's just the only piece of real equipment you're wearing are swim goggles. You are not wearing any oxygen masks, and I believe you do have the fins on. Those are pretty much the only two pieces of equipment. So everything that's being done, you're pretty much just using your entire body as you dive deeper and deeper and deeper into the deep depths of the ocean. And then it's not just a activity that professional freedivers do. There's professional freedivers, and in the case of someone we're introducing the next slide in the Philippines, you can also use it for recreational activities such as spearfishing, which is you dive underwater with a spear. You try to find the biggest possible fish you can to catch, because for someone that's living in a country like the Philippines, for example, that means that is their income for the day.
No, this one?
So here is a quick clip, about 2 minutes long, that I just want to show you guys of someone that is free diving. And so I'm going to go ahead and kind of skip. I don't want to show the full 2 minutes. Let's just kind of get moving. But like you guys get the basic point. So let's get into the case study that Brother Riaz mentioned. This here on the right side of the screen is Imam Eldio Gulsan. And in his community, which is the Sama people in the Philippines, he is known as the Imam. Kind of like how in our centers we refer to like Sheikh Ibrahim as the Sheikh, for example. And his thing was that my community lives on water mainly. So I'm going to go ahead and I am going to go out and free dive to bring everyone a source of national pride. Now, for the Sama people, they're indigenous to the Philippines, and like I mentioned a couple times, their biggest thing is that they survive solely on water. So what were the Imam's goals throughout this? He wanted to set the national record for what the deepest dive in the Philippines was, which was 67 meters. That comes out to 219.8 feet deep. Now, the first time that the Imam did this in the documentary Home Game, which is episode 3, I believe, he failed to set the record because when he came up from the water, he had blacked out, or what they refer to as fainted. And what happens in freediving is when you black out, then you also injure your lungs. People mainly black out because they come up too fast. You have to be balanced in terms of your entire body needs to be in sync. Otherwise, you're going to end up blacking out, and then you're going to be disqualified from the competition because the judges have a specific criteria by which they judge. From red means totally disqualified, and then white means, yes, you did great. You are one of the top performers in this competition. So, by the way, the Imam went ahead and he set the record just last year at another national competition in Japan. So what I want to ask you guys is this: what do you think the Imam's story teaches us from the few factors that I've mentioned?
Perseverance.
Does anyone, right, so we got one person saying perseverance. Does anyone have any other ideas? Like, what qualities did he display that you could easily look at and say, these are the qualities and attributes of someone that's a leader?
To the high standard.
Right, a high standard. So those were two excellent answers, perseverance and high standard. Let's kind of examine the moral of this whole story. So number one, indigenous cultures have a deeper meaning for specific rituals. So for the Sama people, free diving is something that has been passed down from generation to generation to generation. When you talk about East Asian cultures, the big thing to keep in mind is that there's a chain that exists, father to son, father to son, father to son, where dad passes it on to the son, and then it just keeps going from generation to generation. In the context of like East Asian cultures like China, for example, they will use things such as martial arts or practices such as martial arts. Now, what the Imam did was display one of the true characteristics of a leader that sometimes we may not see in today's world from people that are political or religious leaders. This guy went to any length for his people. And what that really shows was that, well, despite whatever our situation is, me as a religious figure in this community, I'm going to do whatever it takes to bring our people a sense of pride. And then the third and final thing that his story taught us was that there's multiple ways to learn. In the context of our community, what do we say? Well, the only way to learn is from like Quran and Sunnah books. But this guy taught his people there are more ways that we can learn than just books. You can do hands-on learning, for example, or learning through experience. Some of the best learning tends to take place when we are actually on the job learning. And so what I want to begin to do is start to kind of wrap this thing up. Can you guys kind of give me an example of a personal story of a time where you were in a leadership position, no matter what it was, and you went all out for whatever group you were leading? Zara, what do you think? Do you have any examples?
I think that the first example that comes to my mind is when I was in class and we were working on a group project and we had a report that was due that was 20 pages. And I knew that all my group members are really lazy, so I just hammered out the entire report in a week. And I said, forget it, because I'm not going to rely on them. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get myself the A and get them the A2, even though they may not have worked for it.
Gotcha. Okay, so that was an excellent example by a college student. I know that there are more examples as well, because we have a lot of people here sitting with different experiences. But to overall wrap things up, guys, the Imam really taught us that there's a lot. Number one, there's a lot of ways to learn. That was personally my biggest takeaway. And then number two, the best leaders, no matter what society, even historically, will go to any length to take care of their people. So if you're interested, go watch Home Game Level or episode 3 on Netflix to get the full scope of this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Zaid, for the wonderful speech and wonderful comparison of the case study, the Imam, the Imam. Very nice. Thank you for the wonderful speech, and I think a lot of people know now about free diving. Except nobody knows about that. Thank you. Next speech is our younger brother here, most youngest Toastmaster. Here, Hakeem Hussain. He's 11-year-old, and he was born in Chicago, and he is very good in soccer, basketball, karate, and art. And I hope he likes to travel, and he didn't mention me that. So, and he is in the 6th grade in the Hardy School. I think he went for the middle school first time, and he's very excited. And also the speech he's been preparing for 2 weeks. So, mashallah, he is very excited to give us a speech today. And he's going to explain how to get every adult to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Have you ever wondered how important it is to be an effective person? Well, today, in my speech, I'm going to tell you why it's so important, teach you how to be an effective person, and by using Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, getting any adult or human to listen to you. You may be thinking what inspired me to do a PowerPoint presentation about Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. It all started in 5th grade. I never knew about these 7 habits until my teacher played a video on the 7th habit, sharpening the saw. Since then, I tried using the 7 habits in my daily life and found it easier to communicate with friends and get things done. Habit 1, be proactive. Being proactive is the opposite of being reactive. Being reactive is not thinking of what you do wrong and instead blaming it on other people or thinking that what you do is always right. Let's say you're getting bad grades on a test in school. And because of this, you blame the teacher for not explaining it correctly and say that the teacher makes the test too hard and therefore study less. This is being reactive. Being proactive is the opposite. When you're proactive, you adapt to the way the teacher would test, and even if the test was hard, you would study more so that even if you get bad grades this time, next time you'll do better. This was habit 1, being proactive. Habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Beginning with the end in mind is thinking of your dreams and your future, and according to that, living your life. The mind is like a search engine. If you type in Lamborghini in the Google search bar and hit enter, you're going to find information about a Lamborghini. But if you type in a random stream of letters, it's going to be extremely difficult to find a Lamborghini. This is how the brain works. You can try this now or later on. Try it for 15 seconds, thinking of every green object you can in the room. Then close your eyes, try to remember, and then try to remember every red object you saw. Then, when you open your eyes, you'll see that you won't be able to think of many red objects, and you'll be able to remember more green objects because the mind is focusing on the green objects. So next time, before you do something, think of what you're doing and believe you can do it, and you'll find it much easier to do. This was habit 2, begin with the end in mind. Habit 3, put first things first. Putting first things first is doing the more important things in life, like school, work, health, etc., before fun, games, and extracurricular activities. If you do this, later on in life, you'll be able to enjoy and have fun because you put first things first. Putting first things first will also help discipline you to get the more important things done in school and later on in your work and your career later on in life. So it's habit 3, putting first things first. Habit 4, think win-win. Thinking win-win is taking what you get and being happy that you even got anything at all. Thinking win-win will help you appreciate the little things in life, and this will help you appreciate how much you have compared to other people around the world. You'll find that by thinking win-win, you'll find that unlike many people in poor countries, that the people don't have many things. People don't have many things that you do, and you'll find that you have many more benefits than many other people. Also, thinking win-win will help you be positive, and being positive will help you make friends and have a better personality. So it's habit 4, thinking win-win. Habit 5, seek first to understand and then to be understood. Seeking first to understand and then to be understood is not only saying what you think, but listening to the other side of the story also. Seeking first to understand and then to be understood reminded me of when the 2 angels came down to Prophet Dawood alayhi salam, and Dawood alayhi salam only listened to one side of the story before making a judgment. He later learned that this was a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. A lot of times when people are talking, people tend to say, yeah, and other things like that. This means you're pretending to listen. A good way to make sure you're listening properly is rephrasing. You can say, what you meant is, your shirt is orange. So what you meant to say is, your shirt is red. And a lot of times you'll find that you're completely wrong, and the person will say, no, I actually said my shirt is green or blue. This is habit 5, seeking first to understand, then to be understood. Habit 6, synergize. Synergize means to collaborate and work together. This means 1 + 1 = 1,000,000. Although this isn't mathematically correct, for humans and animals, it is. Stephen Covey says, when properly understood, synergy is the highest activity in all of life. That was habit 6, synergize. Habit 7, sharpen the saw. Sharpening the saw is taking time to renew and improve your greatest asset, yourself. Stephen Covey suggests that you should take time to think about the way you act and to see what you can do better to strengthen the other habits. Stephen Covey also says at the end of the day, you should think of what you did wrong and learn from your mistakes, and the next day not make those mistakes and try to do better next time. The YouTube channel I got a lot of this information from, and that I would suggest if you want to learn more about the 7 habits, is Million No More. You can go on any of the 7 habits and click the arrow below and click on the links. Thank you for participating. I hope you can use these 7 habits in your daily life. Thank you.
Thank you, Hakeem, for a wonderful speech. Thank you, Hakeem. We all learn some habits. Okay, we did listen to you, and wonderful. So our next speech is going to be a third speech by our guest speaker Nazar Golwal. and he's going to speak about alcoholism, the only disease licensed to sell in bottles. Alcohol is one of the most commonly abused drugs around the world. In 2014, World Health Organization reported alcohol causes 200 different diseases, including cancers, stroke, heart, and liver diseases, etc. It costs United States $249 billion per year, according to 2010 statistics. Why do people drink them? Let's talk about that. That's what Mazhar has been talking about that alcoholism. Thank you. Can you please welcome Mazhar Galwar to give us our third speech. Great. Thank you.
I would need it to be a little bit taller, I believe. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to the first hybrid speech, the Toastmasters program. How many of you think that alcoholism is a disease? Just the show of hands. I just wanted to do a survey. But it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So looks like majority of them you think alcoholism is a disease. And how many of you think it is not a disease? I guess rest of you do not think it is a disease. I'm assuming since you did not raise your hand for calling it a disease. So let's see, in the next 10 to 15 minutes, we will find out what does research tells us if alcoholism is actually a disease. Right? So the word alcohol was first coined by Arabs. There is no surprise, right? They love to drink. They enjoy alcohol. They had varieties of alcohol. Alcohol was in their veins all the time. In fact, if you read if you Google it, there are like hundreds of articles about the word alcohol, they call it alcohol, and how they came to that, and what is the history behind it. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but I thought it was interesting just to bring that term so that you guys know that this term was coined by Arabs. Now let's see what Quran and Hadith say about alcohol. So I picked 2 ayah from Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, the first one I got from Surah Ma'idah, chapter 5 and verse number 90, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, intoxicants and gambling and sacrificing on stone altars and the binding of arrows are nothing but handiwork of Satan. So abstain from it so that you will be successful. There is another verse of Quran in chapter 2, Surah Baqarah, verse number 219, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, they ask you about wine and gambling. Say, in them is great sin and yet some benefit. It's not entirely a problem, but there is some benefit. But it's a great sin, some benefit, but sin is greater than their benefit. So those are the 2 verses. I really want you to pay attention to these 2 verses because I'm going to connect these dots by the end of my lecture. what the research tells us today. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that there is some benefit but more loss, and He's saying it is a handiwork of Shaitan, so abstain from it. So that's the two messages from those two verses of Quran. And then if you look at the hadith, Prophet ﷺ said, it's a hadith of Ibn Majah, he said, this is mother of all the evils, Ummul Khaba'is. All right, so let's go to the stats. I really love the numbers. I really love the numbers, and in my field, numbers matter a lot. But for everything, that is a criteria. So if you look at the stats about alcohol, there was a 2015 survey where they said there are at least 15 million people 18 years of age and up who have alcohol problem. And even in adolescents, I mean, think about 12 to 17 years of age, 623,000 kids have alcohol problem. I'm not talking about alcohol use. I'm talking about alcohol problem. There is a difference. We are not going to go into the details of that, but it is problematic drinking, where it is causing significant, serious problem in these kids' life. And it costed our country, this is 10-year-old, okay, $250 billion, billion with B, it's not millions. And you can look at there are 183 countries in the world. More than 100 countries in the world don't even have a budget of $250 billion a year. All right, now WHO, they have their own stats too. And they said alcohol causes at least 200 different diseases. 200. I've been studying medicine for the last 20 years. I have not come across any other disease, one single factor that can cause 200 diseases. This is not something that the Islamic organization is saying. WHO, 200 diseases. You name it, you get it. Okay. Alcohol in colleges. All right, so 2015 survey says 60% of college students said that they drank last month. 60% of all the students who go to college. All right, and 20% of all the college students have serious alcohol problem. That means they cannot perform anymore. 20% means 1 in 5. 1 in 5 have serious alcohol problem. 1 in 4 have academic problems. Means they get on, their grades fall, they are on probation, they eventually get expelled. And now this gets more intense. 700,000 between ages of 18 and 24 years of age every year, they get assaulted by someone who was under the influence of alcohol. All right, and close to 100,000, 97,000 to be specific, students, they get sexually assaulted or raped by someone who was either intoxicated or they themselves, the victim, was also intoxicated. And I've been doing psychiatry for 14, 15 years now. And I have heard hundreds of stories of these men and women getting assaulted under the influence of alcohol. And do you think they would stop drinking? Unfortunately not. So, and close to 2,000 students every year die of unintentional injuries related to alcohol, either motor vehicle accident. And I know personally 2 family friends, their young children got hit by someone who was under the influence of alcohol and they died. Young men, 2 young men were killed by someone who was under the influence of alcohol. He was driving in the wrong direction, he killed them head on. Research into alcohol use So there is a lot of research, obviously, right? United States, the country where most of the research happens in the world. And they like to research, which is a great thing. Because Quran invites us to ponder upon things, do research and investigate and try to know the facts. Quran doesn't believe in theory, Quran believes in facts. So what they are saying, the initial start of alcohol is usually because of three reasons why a person would try. The number one is availability. It has to be available. If you don't have the alcohol, where is the question of trying it, getting drunk, or hitting someone, or getting, diseases like cancer, or stroke, or heart attacks, and dementias, and so on, right? So availability, acceptability. It has to be acceptable in the society. It should be considered as normal. Hey, you are 21, you don't drink. What's wrong with you? Come on, dude, how would you enjoy? What's life? I mean, that's boring. And the third thing is peer pressure. If everybody is drinking, you'll be an outcast if you don't drink. But how are you going to, mix up with everybody else? That's the age you want to be part of the group. I don't know how many more minutes I have. I'll try to be fast here. Fine. Now, after all the research and all the treatments, being a psychiatrist, almost every day I see someone who has a substance abuse problem, be it alcohol, opioids, cocaine, methamphetamine, acid, LSD, PCP, name it, right? I see some or the other problem. And these patients get put on some medications. There are some treatments for alcohol. There are a variety of medications. And I know none of these medications keep them sober and clean long enough. None of them. I've been doing this for 15 years now. They stay sober for a month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. They are like so proud of themselves, like, oh my God, I made it for 4 months. But guess what? Eventually they fall off the wagon. But there is one treatment. Now here it gets interesting, and that's what I was telling you initially, that I'm going to connect these dots. I want you to pay attention to this slide. This is perhaps the most important slide of all the ones that you saw so far, except the one that you saw initially, that one that the Quran and Hadith was quoted. This is the second most important slide. Here it says Alcoholic Anonymous. Has anybody heard of this group? Alcoholic Anonymous? Awesome. So yeah, at least 2 people have heard. So it is a self-help group for people who have alcohol problem. And the central theme of this is believing in higher power. So if you don't believe in higher power, they don't even allow you to come in because you're not going to benefit from this. And believe it or not, I have met people personally who are part of this AA, Alcoholic Anonymous, and have sustained their sobriety for 25, 35, 40 years. Now you may be wondering, like, why are you telling this? But because the only way they can get rid of alcohol is they submit to God. That's what they have to say when they go there. I am powerless. I cannot control this addiction. And oh God, I submit to you. What is the meaning of submission to God? Muslim, right? The one who submits to God is a Muslim. So if you don't say you're submitting to God, then you don't even become part of the AA. So I take you back to the second slide where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is the handiwork of Shaitan. Abstain from it if you want to be successful. And the only way you can be successful is if you submit to God and tell God, like, oh God, I am helpless. You are the only one who can make me strong enough that I can resist this temptation to go back to this problem. And they are able to stay clean because they have some concept of God. There's some higher power who can, save their life. So what's your conclusion now? You think it's still a disease? So I think if it is a disease, it should be treated like diabetes and hypertension and asthma, and it should be able to be cured with the medication, but you cannot. So, and if it is a disease, it is the only disease that is sold in bottles. It is the only disease that you get licensed to sell, and it is the only disease that you go and buy in the store. Thank you so much.